Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Latest edition of the Football at 4 Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning. Latest insights from Geoff Mosher, Adam Kaplan. Geoff Mosher was over at Eagles practice today. Adam Kaplan on his West Coast swing of training camp. So the Football at 4 guys, very, very busy this time of year. And there's a lot to get to as the Eagles, yes, it's only practice, but there are still things to talk about when it comes to practice. Of course, all the details over at InsideTheBirds.com with the latest information from this man, Geoff Mosher, joining us here for a Monday edition of Football at 4. Geoff, how you doing today?
Good, Josh. How are you?
Doing good. So I saw that you were able to make your way over to the Eagles practice facility. I asked Adam this question last week, so I want to ask you the same question. Obviously, this is the first time we've had, quote-unquote, normal training camp in a couple of years. So what were your thoughts on being there?
It was good. It's good to be back. When you say normal in a couple of years, I felt like last year's training camp was still normal. I mean, obviously, from a vaccination standpoint, the press had to be vaccinated to go in, but I think pretty much everybody was. And maybe there wasn't as many people like season ticket holders in the tents. I can't remember last year, but it was good. It was good to be back. It was normal. A lot of people there, enthusiastic. And the one thing I like about Nick Sirianni's training camp is that even though it's less intense and not as long, there's not a lot of standing around at times. So, for example, and I think this is pretty new, I don't even think they did this last year, but at the end of practice, they do like this developmental 7-on-7s where the only two quarterbacks to do it were Carson Strong and Reed Sinnett. So, because normally those guys don't get the same number of reps in practice that you would like them to get. So they save a little time to have those guys do it. And then Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew were doing something on a separate field while defensive players who were not involved in 7-on-7s were on the other field. So everybody was getting some work in, and there's just not a whole lot of standing around, which is always good. That was something Chip Kelly hated about practice in general, and that's why he loved the no huddle. Everything moves fast, and you race from one thing to another. Obviously this is not a Chip Kelly type of operation going on, but there are some elements about maximizing your time and being efficient with your time that you can see that Nick Sirianni puts into his practices.
Now, I know that Sirianni talked to the media today about how the offense is doing, how the passing game is doing. And, a lot of people out there, they're hanging on to every tweet, every video, every clip, everything with some of this stuff. And, if you go by Twitter, Jalen Hurts is the worst quarterback in the world, and Tua Tagovailoa has never thrown an incompletion at practice.
Yeah, that Adam and I spent a little time on the podcast today, and I feel like we do it every year, but maybe spent a little more time on the podcast that dropped this morning, really explaining what it is you can learn from training camp as a media spectator or a fan spectator versus what you think you might be learning. And, if the offense doesn't have a good day or if it has two rough days, especially early on, it doesn't mean that the offense is going to stink or you have to be really alarmed by the offense going into the year, because a lot of things that they do are just meant to see what guys can and can't do and what's good, what works, what doesn't work. That's what training camp is all about. And every year, we say this all the time, the defense starts ahead of the offense because offense works off of timing and rhythm, and defense doesn't have to work off the same type of timing and rhythm. They just fly up the field. And I also think that when you're not in pads, and there will be in pads tomorrow, when you're not in pads, the defensive linemen, they don't care. They go flying right at the quarterback, and the offensive linemen are trying to block them, but they're not allowed to really fully engage the way you would if it was a full contact game or practice. So the defense is always going to be ahead a little bit of the offense for the most part. But you would like to see, from my impression I came away with is that Jalen Hurts did not throw an interception today. That was a good thing, and he was generally crisp and accurate. But there's really not been much of a downfield passing attack for any of the practices, and there was not much of one today. And you would like to think that will start to manifest at some point soon with the weapons that they do have. If you were unaware of who the Eagles are, like their players, you would not realize that Devontae Smith is one of their best players, because I'm not even sure I know he was out there taking reps, but I don't know if I ever saw the ball in his hands the entire day.
You mentioned the receivers. I want to ask you about that because aside from Quez Watkins saying that he's the fastest man in the NFL, which we'll leave for another random discussion on another day, the Eagles do have some decisions to make when it comes to these receivers, because they signed Pascal in the offseason. Rager obviously is attempting to compete for a job here. Watkins, what is his role going to be? So, we know who the two guys are, but, what are your thoughts on where we are right now with the other receivers whose names are not Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown?
Yeah, and so without that whole downfield passing attack that I was talking about, it's difficult to really make any conclusions at the moment. Plus, Zach Pascal has not been on. I mean, he's been out there, but he's kind of coming back from a pretty nasty case of food poisoning, I guess, that landed him in the hospital recently. So he's out there, but he's just like hanging out. So really, I mean, Quez is getting a lot of run. Dionne Kane and Jalen Rager are getting some good runs there on the second team, and both of them made nice catches today. But as far as really, and again, when they do 11 on 11, 7 on 7s, you get 6 or 7 plays at a time. They'll work on the running game today. They did that a little bit 2 or 3 times. So at the end of the day, I think Jalen Hurts might have thrown 8 passes today, that between 7 on 7s and 11 on 11s. And when 7 on 7s are going on, they also do on the other field, you'll have offensive line, defensive line, one-on-ones. So I try to sort of crane my neck back and forth to take a look at both. So to answer your question, I know, speaking to Quez after the practice, he felt pretty good about his development, specifically as an interior slot receiver, route running, blocking, everything that comes with it. And he is getting some time out there.
By the way, that would be Dionne Kane from Clemson.
Yes.
Missing. I mean, that's a
former Indianapolis Colt, Dionne Kane. Yes.
That's a flash from the past for someone like me. I'm just thinking about Dionne Kane. I mean, that guy was catching passes from freshman Deshaun Watson, for goodness sake.
Yeah. Yeah, and when he was with the Colts, they liked him a lot. He was a late round pick that they thought was going to become a pretty good player for them, and he wound up having, I think, a knee injury.
Yeah,
that sort of derailed the career. So he is somebody to watch. I mean, I don't know if there's room, but if you can slide him through and put him on the practice squad, he's a guy to keep your eye on.
You mentioned about Pascal coming back from the food poisoning. Obviously, Sirianni confirmed some injury issues. Grant Calcaterra and Milton Williams. What's the latest?
Yeah, it sounds like we reported it on Inside the Birds today this morning that Calcaterra had a hamstring injury, and that was going to be a couple weeks for him. So that's going to be it's strange because that puts them down 3 tight ends between Calcaterra and then, of course, Richard Rodgers and Tyree Jackson started camp on PUP. And I didn't get the sense that they're racing to bring in another tight end. They might do it who's a camp body, but it doesn't, they've got Dallas Goedert, they got Jack Stoll. They have a couple of other, they have a guy, Jaden, somebody who's, I forget his last name, is escaping me at the moment. They have Noah Togiai, who caught a couple of balls today, who is, they liked a couple of years ago and then got claimed by the off waivers. And so, you are working on a lot of 11 personnel stuff. So if you got 5 tight ends, I suppose you're okay, but you lose one more. And then you're like, what if I want to work on some 12 personnel? I can't even do 2 or 3 teams of that. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did bring in another camp body tight end. I
mean, isn't J.J. Arcega-Whiteside being converted to a tight end now?
That was the 5th. That was the one that I couldn't fit. So it's Noah, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, okay, and then Jaden. I want to say Graham, but I don't think that's correct.
That's correct.
Oh, it is Graham. Okay, yeah, those are the 3 behind Dallas Goedert and Jack Stoll right now.
Yeah, your memory did not fail you. I was trying to remember his. Well, I mean, nobody's perfect, unless you're Tua Tagovailoa. So, so I just can't get over.
What is it with you and Tua? Are you not happy? Are you a little disappointed that he's getting good press?
I saw someone mention this morning on Good Morning Football, and I went to look it up and realized they were right. Like, if you go through, like, all of, like, the Dolphins beat writers, like, they're reporting from camp, like, Tua's done nothing wrong in camp. Like, he's, like, the perfect quarterback. But you go through, like, Eagles beat reporter Twitter, it's like, oh, Jalen Hurts threw the ball past the guy's head, incomplete, you know?
It's funny. I don't think the Eagle beat writer tweets are as maybe negative as the reactions to their tweet.
Right, the reactions to the tweets are worse than the actual tweet.
Right. So the tweet might be a very fair and accurate tweet that Jalen Hurts, and look, Nick Sirianni, if you listen to his press conference, went through and detailed all 3 interceptions that Jalen Hurts had thrown in the past 2 practices. That's not people making it up. It's simply, a tweet. He threw across his body. That was the one that really stuck out to Nick as, I mean, they're all not ideal, right? But the one where you say that can't happen. We can't do that more often is when you're running to your left and you try to throw the ball in the middle of the field across your body and make a pass that a lot of quarterbacks shouldn't make. It's the no, don't do it. And that, but if you have a rocket arm, it's no. Yes, oh, nice job, but Jalen's not going to make that.
Right, if it's Patrick Mahomes. That seemed to
be the only one. Right. But so if you see beat writer tweets about these interception, it's like this long list of people going, oh, he sucks, we're terrible, the season's over. So I don't know. I would say that the Dolphin fan is so starved for something good that I can understand if they're just really happy that Tua is completing passes at practice.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Newest episode of the pod dropped this morning. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. InsideTheBirds.com for all your Eagles training camp coverage. Geoff, I want to ask you also about Miles Sanders. Over the weekend, he basically was, for lack of a better term, a little complaining about how people were reporting about how he was out there. Nick Sirianni came out and said, Sanders is our guy. But, Geoff, you guys on the Inside the Birds have talked about multiple times how much the Eagles love Kenny Gainwell. So, how much of what's going on is, maybe Sanders just reacting to the pressure being on him?
So, yeah, I think Miles Sanders is absolutely driven this year. And perhaps to a point where, obviously driven by he wants a contract, driven by he wants to show that he's better. I don't even think he has to show it from a talent standpoint, but more from a durability standpoint, right? And he clearly wants opportunities. He said that. He wants to be able to stay on the field so he can get the ball more. And I think he's sort of so driven by it that he's now allowed it to become personal in like that Michael Jordan way of like, and I took that personally, except the thing is he's not Michael Jordan. And he, in my opinion, where I don't defend him is let's get you to a level, Miles, where you're already a great running back who's getting slighted, and then you use that as a motivation. Not a guy who really has left some meat on the bone of your career so far. Let's get you to that point first. And I think the fact that he's even talking about it in public and felt disrespected by articles that were, true, that he did get the second team reps the other day in practice. Whether that was by design or just happenstance in their rotation doesn't matter. But I feel like it would be best for him to just funnel it all out and do your job when you get the ball in your hand, and everything else will take care of itself. So it's sort of disappointing to see him like really verbalizing it and knowing that it's on his mind, because that could lead to pressing. But that's all. We'll see how it goes. But on the other, to the other side, I think people are overreacting to the fact that he took second team reps, and they're not understanding the full context. The Eagles only have 5 running backs in camp. They have Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, and then the 2 other guys that they have are Kendi Brooks and Jason Huntley, who are not going to be on the team unless something goes terribly wrong. And again, limited amount of 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. So they're only using 3 running backs, Gainwell, Sanders, and Scott. And they do want to get it's more to me a testament of how they feel about Kenneth Gainwell, who they know can also catch the ball pretty well, than it's any knock against Miles Sanders. Because the one observation I've made so far, and Adam made the same thing when he was there last week, is Miles Sanders is bigger and stronger. I noticed that today, definitely. He especially his lower trunk area, his lower body, just bigger and more stout. He said he worked on that. And I thought he looked really good and explosive today, and I don't think the Eagles think any differently about him. I think they think highly of Kenneth Gainwell. So that's not a knock on Miles Sanders. And I fully expect that when they're running the ball, Miles Sanders is going to get a lot of carries unless he has some issues again with putting the ball on the ground or dropping passes. But I did notice today at the end of the runs, he had the double secure, both hands cradling the football, like tucked in to the stomach. He is putting an emphasis on that.
Now, the last 2 seasons, Miles Sanders only appeared in 12 games each of the last 2 seasons, which means 1 year he missed 4 games, 1 year he missed 5 games. If Miles Sanders only plays 12, 13 games again this year, is that going to be part of the issue with the Eagles moving forward, that this guy just doesn't play enough games? Or is it going to be more of his future going to be dependent on what happens on the field?
I mean, it won't be part of the issue. It'll be the issue, right? I mean, because, again, when he's healthy, he is a productive player. He's not perfect, but he's productive enough that you want him on the field. He's dynamic. He averaged 5.5 yards per carry last year. The only other running back to do that who had at least 150 carries was Nick Chubb. So the explosion is there. The dynamic playmaking ability is there. And they're kind of tied in when we talk about production or health. Well, you have to be healthy to be productive. Now, granted, again, there's been some fumbles and drops, and that has nothing to do with health that he has to clean up. So no doubt about it. They didn't throw the ball to him today or in by design, so I didn't see him catch the ball. And we have to see when they start working on the pads will come out is when they start to do like kind of the blitz pickup drills. But he's a good running back. I think people are a little bit too sort of dismissive of him and thinking that Kenny Gainwell is going to be the lead back like by week 1 or week 2, and I don't see that.
Well, I said this earlier in the show, Jeff. People forget that Sanders, he was top 10 in the NFL his rookie year in yards from scrimmage. When he first got here, he was, I think, 500 receiving yards and 800 rushing yards that year. So we know he's capable of being at a certain level. It's just a question of, can he maximize it now coming into year 4 in the NFL?
Yeah, I think it's very clear right now of all the running backs the Eagles have, he is the most dynamic and explosive. Gainwell has good shiftiness. He can make things happen, not taking anything away from him. But look, go back 2 years ago, even when they struggled at 4-12 and he had all those runs of 70 or more yards. I mean, he has a second level explosion that it really helps to have in your offense, especially when you have a great offensive line that can give you the first 3 to 5, and all you're asked to do is make a safety miss. He's got that, and so that's a commodity that not everybody has, and you want to be able to keep that and have that.
Couple more questions for Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, at Geoff Mosher NFL on Twitter. Now, we've mentioned a couple times tomorrow is pads, but explain to people what that means in today's NFL, because there's still a lot of Eagle fans who remember being in pads from 20 years ago, and that was a different story.
Right. No, so pads means everything I saw today will happen again, just with pads on. They will not tackle to the ground. Nick Sirianni made that very clear today. And they will not be in pads every single day. They have days divided in color coded. There's red, yellow, and green. Red, low intensity. Yellow was today, medium intensity, and tomorrow will be high intensity. So when pads come out, it definitely ratchets up. So even without full tackling to the ground, you will see, I believe, you'll see the offensive linemen be able to assert themselves a little bit more, and that will help with the passing game and the pass protection, and then maybe enable a little bit more of a downfield passing game. But in general, one-on-ones, anything that you do gets a little more physical when the pads come out. So there's always that fine. It's definitely not what it used to be. Ain't no Oklahoma drills going on. Ain't no two-a-days, but it still brings the level of intensity up.
We didn't get much to the defense, but what were your thoughts on what you saw, at least you got to see of the defense, who was actually out there?
Yeah, so it looked to me like it obviously, as we've been talking about, multiple fronts. They played some of their 3-4/5-2 looks with Jordan Davis, and I thought Jordan Davis looked spry. I thought he looked active. And then they would vary between that and then the second round of 11-11s. It looked to me like more nickel, right? Like a 4-3 pass rushing look where you had Sweat as a over left tackle, hand in the dirt, and Hassan Reddick standing up on the other side. Now Fletcher's still not practicing, so your other pass rushers were Hargrave, and they kind of rotated some other guys next to him, whether they were in run or pass defense. But Marlon Tuipulotu looks good, looks spry. He's playing some nose when Jordan Davis is not in there. So, they waived Luther Ellis with an injury, I guess, and everybody wondered, well, how do you back him up? And Marlon Tuipulotu was a guy they drafted last year because even though he's not 350 pounds, he's a strong enough, stout enough athlete to be able to play that nose in a backup role if need be. And with Fletcher Cox off the field, he's getting some run in those nose and 3 technique situations. I also saw Jordan Davis lining up as a 3 technique and some 4-3. So he's moving around pretty well there. The one thing you got to watch with him, Nick Sirianni was asked about Jordan Davis's weight. And he said he came in at the weight we asked him to be at, but we're always going to be on him. We always got to make sure we're on him. So someone asked Jordan Davis, what weight do they want you to play at? And he said 340, 330 in that range. And then the follow-up was, well, are you that? And he was like, I'm working every day and, trying hard. He never answered the question, and Nick Sirianni never directly answered the question either. It leads me to believe that Jordan's probably a little bigger right now than they want him to be, which is why I think Nick Sirianni talked about how they have to stay on him every day on that.
Well, something interesting to keep an eye on, the story of Jordan Davis's physique, we'll call it.
Yes.
Physiology.
That. Oh, and Nakobe Dean. I know a lot of people are wondering, like, why am I hearing about Nakobe Dean taking first team reps? He's Nakobe Dean. And as we talked about on the pod, I in my almost 20 years of covering the team, I don't remember any 3rd round pick who just snapped his fingers and was, a first teamer by the 4th practice. I mean, he still has to earn his stripes. No matter what you thought of him, if you thought he was top 40, I mean, he went to the 3rd round for a reason.
Yeah.
So he is a 3rd round pick, and he will be treated accordingly. Doesn't mean he's doing badly. It just means that they need to groom him and work him up, and he's got to earn the stripes.
Football is still a meritocracy, the last time I checked.
That is correct.
Geoff Mosher, at Geoff Mosher NFL on Twitter. The Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning with all kinds of great insights and information, and Geoff will be back later this week for another edition of Football at 4. Geoff, I believe the next time that you are on this segment, Mike Gill should be back in this seat.
Oh, from his extended vacation that he's passing off as travel problems? Is that what, as I understand it, got quote-unquote stuck in Paddy?
Apparently he's stuck in Ireland now.
Oh, now it's quote-unquote stuck in Ireland? What an excursion. They sound like they should make a movie about this thing.
Maybe that's what he's working on. He's working on his next movie deal. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Well, great job pinch hitting for him, Josh. Always fun.
I appreciate that. Take care, Geoff.
Take care.